Just trying to survive and learn to love along the way by Foreplay on AO3. Episode 55, Chapter 55, A Family and Notifications. Izuku invites Hitoshi and Shoto to come and hang out in his room. He doesn't feel like being alone right now, and has a feeling that neither of his friends do either. They've been at the dorms for a few days now, after everyone had the chance to find their rooms. On the first day, his dad had called a meeting in the common rooms. He knows that people have noticed that Sato was missing. Anyone who wasn't aware of what happened had probably assumed that he was pulled out of UA. The school had been very tight-lipped about it, so there's no way it got out. That's what the meeting was about. His dad vaguely explained what happened, only giving enough details for them to know their classmate was a hero. It's been a somber few days, and Izuku would really like the comfort of having friends nearby. They both agree quickly, and the smiles on their faces when they knock on his door tells him that they were both relieved to have a distraction. They decide to watch a movie together. Izuku has the feeling that none of his friends want to talk about the traitor, and if they sit there talking, there's no doubt they'll somehow make their way to that topic. They're only 10 minutes into the movie when there's a knock on the door. Izuku pauses the movie and slides his laptop over to Hitoshi before getting up to open it. His dad is there, hand posed to knock again. "Hey Dad, what's up?" Izuku grins at him. He's always happy to see his dad. However, his grin falters when he sees the look on his dad's face. "Is Todoroki in here? He's not in his room, and he's not answering his phone." His dad speaks loud enough for the rest of the room to understand, and Izuku hears Shoto slide off his bed and step up behind him. "Sorry, Sensei. I left my phone in my room to avoid distractions. What's going on?" "It's a family matter. Let's step out into the hall." Shoto tenses up beside him at the mention of family, and he follows Izuku's dad out of the room without a word. Izuku leaves the door open just a crack before returning to his bed. He and Hitoshi sit there in silence. They don't know if Shoto will be coming back in, but if he doesn't, they don't want to continue the movie without him. It's only a few minutes before Izuku's door opens up again, and Shoto enters, looking slightly panicked. He makes his way over to his desk chair instead of the bed. Izuku shares a worried glance with Hitoshi when their friend doesn't speak up. They let the silence continue for a few minutes, but he's far too worried to let it continue any longer than that. "Shoto, is everything alright?" Shoto looks at them, then he looks like he's about to cry. Izuku doesn't think he's ever seen him like this. "No, not really. It's my brother." He doesn't elaborate, so Izuku speaks up again. "Natsuo, is he okay?" "Natsuo is fine. It's my other brother." Izuku didn't know Shoto had another brother. He definitely never mentioned one before. "His name is Touya, but I guess he goes by Dabi now. He's the villain they caught at the training camp." A villain? Why in the world did one of Shoto's siblings turn to villainy? "Do you know why he was there?" Hitoshi asked a question that Izuku doesn't want to. "I don't know the exact reason, but I can guess." Shoto looked away from them, a frown on his face. He's probably deciding what to tell them, so Izuku decides to keep quiet. "It all started before I was born. Hitoshi, you've met my dad, right?" Hitoshi nods at Shoto, who takes a deep breath before continuing. "Well, he wasn't always the way he is now. By that I mean nice." And never wasn't always nice. Izuku can't imagine that, but most people are capable of change. "He used to be obsessive with surpassing All Might. He married my mother for her quirk, in hopes that they would have a child that could do it for him." A quirk marriage? That's super outdated, even for Endeavor's generation. Touya ended up with a really strong fire quirk, maybe stronger than my dad's. So as soon as he could, my dad started training him, wanted him to be a hero from the get-go. Except, from what I hear, it wasn't exactly training. It was more like abuse. I remember bits and pieces of it from when I was really young, but by the time I manifested my quirk, Touya was gone. He'd run away. Izuku doesn't blame him. He thought about running away a lot when he was younger. As soon as my quirk came in, my dad started training me in his place. It was awful. I started to hate the fire side of my quirk because of him. Then I got this. Shouta pointed out the scar around his eye. Did Endeavor do that to him? Dad was an awful father, and he was also a pretty bad husband. It drove my mother insane. I walked into the kitchen one day while she was boiling water in a kettle. I guess she snapped when she saw me. Poured boiling water over my face. Izuku doesn't know what to say to that. Shouta hardly ever mentioned his mother, and now he knows why. Dad heard me screaming and ran in. Seeing her snap like that snapped him out of it. He rushed me to the hospital, and by the time I got home, she was gone, put in a mental institution by my father. Shouta has kept a fairly straight face until now, but retelling this much trauma must be getting to him, so it's no surprise when he starts to tear up. He slowly got better after that. Stopped the horrible training. He started being a lot nicer to my siblings, too. It was hard, for a while. We were scared that he would change back right away. But after a year, I think we came to realize he never even talked about All Might anymore, and he didn't even care about his hero ranking. That must have been hard to adjust to. Izuku can't imagine how he would feel if his mother had suddenly started being nice to him. But by then it was far too late for Touya. He only ever knew my father when he was mean and abusive. He stopped by a few years after my mom burned me. Dad tried to explain he was better now. Told him he'd even went to therapy, which made sense with how much he changed. Izuku can understand that too. If he had been in Toya's position, he probably wouldn't have believed him either. Touya took one look at me and saw the scar. He assumed that Dad did it, and started screaming at him. He left pretty quickly after that, and we haven't seen him since. Until now, I guess. Shouta is full-on crying now, but Izuku can tell that he's not done talking, so he tries not to react. I can't believe he killed one of our classmates. I was really young when he left, but from what I remember, he was always such a good big brother. Izuku stands from his bed and makes his way to where Shouta sits at his desk. He pulls the other boy into a hug and waits until he relaxes to speak. I'm so sorry, Shouta. His friend just holds on tighter. Hitoshi slides off the bed behind them and makes his way over. He stands there awkwardly for a moment before joining the hug. One of Shota's arms leaves Izuku's to wrap around Hitoshi's instead. He's glad that Shouta was able to trust him with this. Izuku's going to support him through this, no matter what happens. It's the least he could do, considering how supportive Shouta has been. Alright, we finally get the full story, and I love that. I love that we finally get the full story of, like, what happened with Endeavor. So, his redemption arc started so much earlier. 10 years ago, which is why he behaved so differently. I was so confused throughout. Like, I was like, okay, so something definitely happened, but what was it? What's the story there? Was he just never abusive in this one? And if so, then how did he end up being with, Todoroki's mother? What's the story there? And I'm glad that we finally got to see that story. I'm also glad that we didn't get the story immediately after figuring out that, Endeavor is nice, right? It gives us that suspense of like, okay, wait, hold up, is it going to be introduced? Is it going to be told? Don't get me wrong, I probably wouldn't have been that bad, but I like that we got to wait. And I like the way that we found out. The way that we found out is the way that, the other characters found out of Todoroki's past. A very fluid, very natural. This chapter did not seem like it's a chapter to tell us what happened with Todoroki. Because in a sense, this chapter I feel has two purposes, right, by foreplay. Two purposes. Purpose one, we explore Todoroki and what he's feeling, right? He is finding out that his brother, right, who ran away a while back, has joined and become a villain and is now captured, right? And this is just to display Todoroki's feelings of that, how he is dealing with that. We're probably going to see more chapters of that and getting to really delve deep into how he is doing, especially with the family dynamic and stuff like that, right? And then two, it is for us viewers to see this is Endeavor and how he has changed from the canon, right? But because this chapter is put in such an organic area and it's such an organic way of saying it that it does not feel like it's only, oh, this is only a chapter to tell us things. Like the characters, like for example, villain monologues. Some villain monologues, they feel weird to you, right? They feel unorganic or just not, something's off. And most of the time it's because the character is not talking to the other characters. The character is talking to the audience. But it's phrased and told in such a way that it serves no fucking purpose, right? I hate villain monologues sometimes because it makes no sense. It really does not, okay? Some villain monologues that I do enjoy are the ones where, okay, it makes sense why this character would be saying this. It makes sense on why they're saying these words. It makes sense. But for the most part, I don't like villain monologues because they're meant for the viewer. No, I'm telling the viewer, like, if I were to write a villain monologue, it would not be to tell the viewer what the villain's motives are. No, the villain monologue is to express the character and how the character is, not their motive. I'm not saying this is why they're a villain. No, I'm not exploring that with a villain monologue. I'm exploring that with the way they act, but specifically the villain monologue. The only reason why there would be a villain monologue is because if that villain is the type of villain who does monologues. And take what they say, if I ever do a villain monologue, and I ever write something like that, take what that villain is saying with a grain of salt. Because just because it's spewing out of their words, like with any of my writing, just because the character is saying something, that does not mean that that's what the character is meaning. I know for a fact that there is an area in a fanfiction, there's a fanfiction that I'm planning, that I really want to write this one line, and the line, I hear my mother. The line, no, that's not the line. The line does not mean that, right? So the character says something along the lines of, I can't keep healing you. You're on your own. You're being selfish, and walks away, right? That line is so much more deep than just that, right? Or for another instance, I can't think of one, but for the most part, my characters say something, but they mean something completely different, right? Because that's how humans work, right? Psychology-wise, that's how it works. Half the times we're saying shit and we don't actually fucking mean it. Or we say something, but the undertones of what that is, you have to read between the lines. And for the most part, for my writing, you have to read between the lines, right? Sometimes the character is saying something, but the character means something completely different. And don't worry, it's not all my lines. You don't have to like contradict all my lines. But specific moments, especially when characters are at high emotions, whatever they're saying, analyze it. Because I bet you half of it is just a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. So when it comes to villain monologues, or chapters like this where, you know, people are trying to get out somebody's backstory, a lot of the times authors take the route that's the safe route. I'm just gonna put you in a flashback route, which is not bad. I'm not saying that it's a bad one. It's interesting to put flashbacks. I have flashbacks in mine. Take it, most of the ones where I have flashbacks, specifically I'm looking at this one where it's, I think the name is, I need to pull it up because it's such a fucking long name, but it's the damned, the loved, the feared, and the abandoned in some order. I don't know the order, hold up. Okay, it's abandoned, trapped, feared, loved, and the damned, right? That's a fic. That's the fic. And for the most part, in certain chapters, chapter blocking, there is flashbacks, but there's a reason why there's a flashback. So if we're in a certain character's point of view, they're having that flashback. Because most of the characters in that book, not that book, but that fanfic, have PTSD. So whenever one of their episodes come on and they're having a flashback, they have that. So either the flashback happens in the beginning of the chapter and the whole chapter is a flashback, and at the end of the chapter, the character wakes up in a breaking sweat because they're reminded of their past. Or they're doing something, a trigger happens, and the flashback happens. Not all the characters have flashbacks though. Only the characters whose PTSD reacts with such way. There's some characters who have like I wouldn't call it a flashback, where it's just a moment where it's written weirdly because the character is all foggy, the world is hazy, and all of a sudden they're viewing things like in a tunnel vision, and all they could really focus on is their feelings and emotions and how fearful they have and how everything is feeling like as if they're back there, right? That is again, to show different types of PTSD and different types of ways that it affects people. But with villain monologues and stuff like this chapter here, a lot of the times authors do tend to go flashback. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. It's the safe thing, right? Because dialogue telling can be really unorganic, right? It could be really, and in this instance, it's not unorganic. This is Shoto talking to two of his friends. Like, for example, My Hero Academia main, where Shoto just tells Izuku, my father. I hate that. With a passion. With a passion. I'm sorry. I don't think Shoto should behave like that, right? I actually love fics where it has it where Shoto's like, I'm not going to tell you, what's the point? No matter who I could tell the police, I could tell the news, it doesn't matter. Nothing's going to change. I'm not going to get saved. There's no point in wasting my breath in something that can never be changed. I will always be his son, and I will always be under his care kind of situation, and I love those. But in My Hero Academia main, when he just sprouts out to Izuku, I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure the duration of that is like, they've just met, like, at the max a month, and that's pushing it. That's pushing it, if we're being honest. Really pushing it, right? Let's say at the max, let's really, really push it. 3 months. They've been friends. Not even friends. They've just been in the same class for 3 months. I'm sorry. That's kind of pushing it, right? If we have that, like, if Shoto is the type of person who just splouts that, Izuku shouldn't be the only person he splouts it to. That shouldn't be the only thing he says, right? We could make it a whole thing where out of nowhere, like, people are talking, like, I don't know, it's a class scene, they're talking, and somebody mentions how, you know, pretty Bakugou is, not Bakugou, Todoroki is, but, like, that scar, and then Todoroki out of nowhere is like, oh, my scar, my mother burned me, you know, and just go back casually, right? We can have that be one of his traits, but it can't just be a one-off thing, happens, and then goes away, because clearly that shows to me that is not a character trait, that is put there for the viewer to know what happened, right? And instead of doing a flashback, which I'm surprised, My Hero Academia as a whole loves flashbacks, they just have him say it, and it bugs me, it bugs me. It's always bugged me because it felt funny and ridiculous. And it's not funny or ridiculous because he's admitting to the fact that his father is abusive. I'm sorry, but making your freaking son train till he's vomiting, that's abuse. That is quite literally abuse, right? I'm just saying. I went on a whole tangent. I'm sorry. I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm seeing a nerd because, like, my hairstyle is in a way that's nerdy. I have my glasses on and then I have a very nerdy shirt. I'm a nerd. Oh God, I'm a nerd. What am I gonna do? I'm a nerd. But I'm a nerd. No, yeah, I'm just a nerd. Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.